Coming to you live from digital address GA0992539. This is News Desk, but we'll take you back to the graphic Stanbic business breakfast meeting. We'll be back with details.
We are doing and trying to spread it as much as possible. You are ensuring consistent source of agribusiness. Therefore, I completely agree that we should use agriculture in all the advantages it brings to the economy in terms of production, in terms of feeding ourselves. For any nation that cannot talk about food security has a problem. And therefore, we're talking about growing for food and jobs. The jobs part is the agribusiness, industrialization. And the food is being in a position to feed ourselves. And that is how our policy on agriculture is growing for food and jobs. So I completely agree with you. We've not really done well to agriculture. If you look at the statistics of agriculture growth, it is a shame. Because we have the land, we have rivers running from north to south, we have everything that should make us pursue agriculture as a source of this thing. On automation, I agree with you, but you must always do first things first. You don't jump to automation when you don't even have a national ID card. What are you automating? You don't even have data about your people. So it is important to talk about the fundamentals of automation. And the most fundamental thing about automation is knowing the data of your people through the national ID, and that is what we are doing. You do the national ID, you also automatically expand even your revenue base. Because about 70% of our business is in the informal sector. And the data on them you don't have. And the gentleman asked the right question. You need data to do many of the things. And your data must be accurate. I'm happy to say that the Minister of Agriculture is about to start an agriculture census. And it's very important because the last one was done in the 70s. You need an agriculture census to be sure about your data on regional basis and even on district basis so that you can take advantage of what you are doing. Now, when we talk about one district, one factory, the final product of a factory may become the raw material of the other. So when you talk about market, it's not that all the markets must be consumption markets. No. All over the world, people produce for others to use as input for production. And the one district, one factory, we already identified a few where people are going to produce and serve as a raw material for other districts to also finalize. So I think we thought about all those things. We identified the problems of the industrial sector, and we think that unemployment is the number one problem we have as a country. And therefore, we're thinking about industrialization. But as I said, industrialization operates within certain environment. And the reason why many of our industries collapse is that we did not pay enough attention to the microenvironment. And therefore, we must take that on board, pay attention to it, and then resolve the jigsaw downstream. Then it's going to work. And that's exactly what our policies are arranged to do, and that's exactly what we are going to pursue. It's important that we take advantage of the country's natural resources. It's important that we take advantage of all the know-how we have and the manpower, the labor that we have. And I think the one district, one factory, the long run, is the way that's how the Germans went. Just after the war, this is how they went. So that those, about half of their factories were producing for other factories as an input. So we should not always be talking about a final market product for use. No. You must be producing also for others to use as raw material. And that will soon happen within the system because we want it spread. We want to solve the problem of unemployment in a very practical way. And we must use our environment.
About did government consider why government factories collapsed?
No, we did.
How many vehicles are you
importing? Well, I'm happy to say that, not me. The Minister of Finance is using the four-wheel drive from Kantanka. And I asked him in Kumasi during the policy review, he said, the performance is fantastic. He's so happy with it. And if the Minister of Finance is using it and is recommending it like this, you can be sure that the next budget will find favor for those products. That's the way I see it. And I think the way he did it is good. Because if you get a recommendation from the Minister of Finance of a product, not by hearsay, but by experience, it matters. And I think he did talk about it in Kumasi at a public forum last week.
I guess the bigger question, when it comes to something that Dr. Tingisi said, is there a deliberate government policy to help the Kantanka business, not only to produce the vehicles, but to expand and, I guess, make it a policy, and we have it in India, that all government vehicles should be Kantanka vehicles? Is there a deliberate policy like that?
Put it this way. Assembly plants, people who produce other smaller cars other than. I'm happy to say that two of the most popular world brands of cars are pushing hard to come and establish their plants in Ghana.
Do you know them?
I know them, but I wouldn't call their names now. And they've sent an MOU. We have literally agreed. Of course, there should be a policy for support for assembly plants, which will not only apply to Kantanka, but will apply to any company that comes to do an assembly plant here in Ghana. And these are two really huge ones. And they are pushing very hard. And we are also very happy about it. We are going to give them all the support. We will then come out with a policy to support assembly plants, which obviously will include Kantanka. And we'll be too happy to make sure that those who produce here have access to the market here. And in fact, some of the clauses in the MOU they sent to us was that we buy a certain minimum number of vehicles from their production. And I think it does make sense, as long as they are also reasonably competitive in pricing.
Thank you very much. I'll take my final round of questions and I have a lady. I'd love to hear the lady's question or contribution. Is there a microphone?
Maybe let me do this, then the lady can do that after me, because I already have the microphone.
Okay, yes, please, go ahead.
My name is Kester Crunchy. I write for the graphic business. I would like to know, first of all, how many companies, textiles and pharmaceutical companies, have accessed the 36 million stimulus package. And I also want to find out if the senior minister thinks that the 1D1F factories are going to be able to produce to meet the standards that are required, one, and also be able to produce it to be cost effective, to be able to be competitive. Because he said that the reason why they will allow some imported products to come in is because they are more cheaper, and they will not block that opportunity for consumers to buy an expensive product produced here. So is he not thinking that those products that are going to be produced here by these 1D1F factories are going to be overshadowed because it will be more expensive than the ones they will import from China and other Asian countries?
Okay, thank you very much. I had a question at the back. Yes, sir.
Yes, mine has to do with government policy and then the policy disconnect, especially during its implementation. If you look at the packaging subsector, for instance, government is trying to support the pharmaceutical sector, and then they bring in packaging material as part of their raw materials, thus making it difficult for packaging products being produced locally to be able to compete with those ones that are coming in from India and China. Another example is the textbooks or manufacturing of books. They come in duty-free. However, when you produce books in Ghana, you are expected to pay taxes. And also, when you import paper to produce those books in here, you're expected to pay taxes. I'm wondering how you'll be able to be very competitive with the ones that are coming in from India and China. And these are policy-driven things. And especially during implementation, they are done such that it favors other industries as against others. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The final question?
Thank you very much. My name is Mebu Kwashi, Aquatic World Industries, and a member of African Women in Agribusiness. My concern is to do with agricultural waste, or maybe I should say post-harvest waste, because we're looking at agric being primarily the raw material for manufacturing. You look at, I think 2 years ago, Joy FM, 2 or 3 years ago, there was an issue on avocado pear going rotten because the women couldn't sell. They produced in abundance. These things are used for, you can get oil from it, you can use it for beauty products. So why can't we help these women? Because it saddens my heart when you see somebody having to sell the product very cheap because you don't want it to go waste. Tomatoes, I know, can be converted into fertilizer and that kind of thing. So what are we doing to help? So that if I know that even if we produce in abundance, we will still have the excess being used for something else, and I will be not forced to sell it at a very cheap rate, and so encourages me to produce more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would take my final responses to that. Mr. Fomafo.
Well, thank you very much. I think the gentleman who asked the question about the books, paper, and the rest brought a very important problem to everybody's attention. Now, when I was the Minister of Finance, I found out that we were bringing in laptops free because of use in schools, but there was duty imposed on the spare part, the components of the laptops. So literally, you were not encouraging people to assemble here, because if they are coming in components, they pay duty. If they come already assembled, there's no duty. So we quickly corrected it when it was brought to our attention and removed the duty on all inputs in respect of assembling of these laptops, etc. The same thing that we should do for the education sector. A book is made up of paper and writing. And therefore, you must look at the whole chain, and we want to provide a support for education. You make the support not only uniform, but encourage production of the books in Ghana so that the Indians don't have advantage over their Ghanaian counterparts. May I kindly ask you to put this problem in writing to the Minister of Finance, copy to me, and don't forget, in November, there will be a budget so that we address some of these problems. And I think this is not only to him. If there are some of these problems which are not intentional, because they are being looked at separately because of the harmonized code system, let's know them and don't give them to yourself as a sector and complain. That's why we have all the various associations, the AGI, PEF, and all these things. You can table them through your various associations. Very well done. And I think the Minister of Finance will be too happy to make corrections. Because the idea of these duties is to also protect local production. But I said you don't have to overprotect to protect inefficiency. That's why I give you the price of 10,000 and 100. You will not protect 10,000 through duty so that somebody producing it at 10,000 can sell. No. There must be a relation. If somebody is producing it at 9,000 and the import is 1,000, you can easily raise it up to make the correction. Then you are talking about taking advantage of the local production. Don't forget that anything we use which is produced outside Ghana, we are importing the cost of labor in it. And we have unemployment on hand. And therefore, we should, whatever we do, we should make sure that we are encouraging employment of our own people. And if that would mean a small cost addition, we should all be ready to take that on board, because we want to generate employment as a byproduct of industrialization. And this is critical for government. If our problem is unemployment, then we must resolve it also through tariffs. And I think we should be ready to do that. But we cannot overdo it to protect inefficiency. That's what I mean. We must always do it bearing in mind certain ratios. Don't forget that we also have harmonized ECOWAS tariffs. There is a limit to how much you can impose on some of these items because of the unions we belong, like ECOWAS, because of UNTAD, because of all these international bodies, which we are part of. So we have a limit to how much we can do in some of these things. But as much as possible, we should provide a certain reasonable protection for local protection, for local production as a way of generating employment within Ghana. And we must do it because unemployment is a big problem.
There's a plea from our rep from the Women's in Agriculture about assisting with dealing with post-harvest losses, and that the women who, for example, deal in tomatoes go to waste, but you can use tomato even if it's rotting for something else, and that they want some assistance there.
This is where, see, the private sector has nose to smell money. If indeed there is that big problem, you find out that somebody will pick it. But it is something, you cannot put up a factory based on just one bumper harvest as a raw material. Because if you do, you are going to lie idle in 11 months of the 12. So there are so many factors which go into sinking a capital into an industry. And therefore, we must, by all means, reduce post-harvest costs. And I would say that you can only process surpluses. We are successful as a country producing cocoa and the second biggest producer in the world because cocoa is not edible directly. So we are not competing with the consumers. Now, if you take cassava, if you take plantain, and you decide to process plantain, and you want to compete with the consumer, we are going to have problems. Because the consumer can buy 1 or 2 fingers of plantain for 5 cedis without any problem. But at the industrial level, they must buy it at 10 pesos to be able to process and make headway in the export. And therefore, anytime you are competing with consumption, then there's a problem. So you must produce and have surpluses to be able to process without any hindrance. So it's important. But something like this, the Ministry of Agriculture should look at it and see what we can do with our post-harvest losses. But our post-harvest losses is not coming out like avocado. It's the way, say, cereals like maize and this are attacked by weevils and that kind of thing, where finally we lose quite a bit through post-harvest losses because we are not able to sanitize the warehousing system properly. So we lose a lot of our products, and we need to do it right. We need technology to come in. These days, just common spraying of these cereals will even prevent losses at post-harvest. So it's a very important problem of Ghana, post-harvest losses, and we can resolve it through technology and through processing, depending on the level of the excess. Because some of excesses will not support industrialization. Some excesses will support industrialization. Otherwise, you must establish special plantations of avocado for processing. Then you are in business because you have the product and you are establishing the plantation specifically for a raw material for processing. So it is reliable, it is controlled in quality, and you can do it.
I'll take a quick intervention from Hassan and Danny, and then I'll take a final comment from Dr. Otunjesi.
Hello. Hello. Thank you very much. I think I've been conferring with my colleague Nana from Graphic and trying to put what we've heard today into context. I think if we pull together what Sylvia shared with us, what Dr. Otunjesi, and of course our venerable senior minister, there's been a lot that has been provided. Now we are asking ourselves, therefore, from here, where do we go? And this platform that Graphic and Stanbic has put together is supposed to be a different platform. We don't want it to just be a talking shop. And if you look behind you, it is unlocking economic growth through manufacturing. And we don't choose these subjects lightly. You know, I think we choose it with Graphic with the intent of making sure that there is, absolute positive contribution. I give a very live situation, which I think the senior minister, in response to some of the questions, has addressed. One of the reasons we chose this was there's a factory on the Spintex Road. It's called Rex Africa. They are actively closing down. Why? Because they manufacture basic construction tools, wheelbarrows, shovels, basic construction, concrete mixers. Now, when they bring in the plate, they are charged duty. When they bring in the engines to motorize, they are charged duty. When they bring in the wheels, they are charged duty. However, if somebody landed all of that in Ghana, fully assembled, there was no duty. So if we think it was only in education, so it's real. And I think between what Dr. Tinjesi said and what the Honorable Minister said, and of course the unlocking value that Sylvia shared with us, we're asking whether the Senior Minister would not allow us to put all of the ideas that came out of this so we can have at least 3 agenda items that gets into government and hopefully into the budget for November. That says that anything that can be manufactured in Ghana, all the intermediate inputs into that is exempt from tax, whichever sector it is. And also between all the enabling environment that the Honorable Minister has cited and what Dr. Tinjesi said, we can have a focused national policy on 1 or 2 issues of industrialization so that we can say that this platform produced something, because I think the contributions have been fabulous, but we just couldn't go away having heard it. So I think everything hangs on the Senior Minister, that we want to see a seminal paper, summary, 3 points, 3 things that this platform has generated that you carry into government policy. And I think Dr. Chindesi will be part of that process. So my appeal on behalf of Graphic and Stanbic, that we can make this platform absolutely useful. The topic is unlocking economic growth.
I think it's fair if you can respond to that plea very briefly.
Managing Director, thank you very much for this brilliant suggestion. But there's a point you must bear in mind. Some raw materials are also finished produce of others. Sugar. When you talk about sugar, most of you are thinking about what we use at home. So it's a final product. There's duty on it. Sugar is also used extensively in the beer brewing industry. So to the brewer, sugar is a raw material. The plates, the metal plates, majority of those plates are not used for wheelbarrows in this country. They come for other finished products. And therefore we need, as Dr. Tinjesi suggested, a more detailed way to avoid people shortchanging the whole economy. People import certain things under the guise of raw material, and you find them on the market as a finished product on sale. And if you remove the duty, they cheat the whole nation. And where your raw material is also a finished product of others, then a detailed analysis is required to be able to talk about exemptions. But I'm really very happy about coming out with something and suggestions as to how to treat these special cases. But bear in mind that there is always a finished product and a raw material. And sometimes certain products satisfy both ends. And we don't want people to shortchange the economy. I'm very happy, and I'll be too happy. I'm the vice chairman of the economic management team. My boss is the vice president. If we get something put together like this, we'll be too happy to look at it and give you the right, call it budget language, to minimize cheating. Because we need that one. And I'll be very happy to support it in a way. Thank you very much.
Final thoughts, Mr. Tinjesi.
I'm glad I'm not the politician and the policy maker. But I'd like to, on my own, also say a big thank you to the senior minister. It's good to know that we have such people at the helm of economic policy in this country. What I'd like to add to that very briefly is that between low prices and incomes, I think that as national policy, we should also always go for incomes. What I mean is, between getting goods cheap for our populace and getting jobs which will give them money, I'm sure if you ask, most people would choose to have a job which will give them an income than have low-priced goods in the marketplace which they may not even be able to afford. So that should be one of the drivers of our policy. The second thing I'd like to say on agric and the lady's comment, agric subsidies need to be structured in a way which encourages production. I'll give you an example. If I subsidize fertilizer, it's good. It's supposed to encourage production. But you could also have the situation where the fertilizer gets smuggled outside Ghana because it's much cheaper here than in the surrounding countries. There has been situations where subsidized fertilizer has been used to grow marijuana. Because if I buy the fertilizer, you can't stop me from what I want to grow with it. But if you structure your subsidy, wait, take your time. If you structure your subsidy such that you subsidized finished product, that is, if I will buy all the maize you will produce at a price which will give you a margin, you know that until you produce the maize, you don't get money. So whatever you have to do in order to produce the maize, you will do so. And when I talk about looking at how cocoa became a $1 billion industry in Ghana, in colonial times, all that you were guaranteed was a certain price. And once the farmers knew that I can grow cocoa and get a price which will enable me to be able to put up a house in Oda or Kumasi or Techiman or whatever, because the price was so good, whatever they had to do to produce the cocoa, they would. Now, we have changed the structure of the subsidy, and we are subsidizing inputs. Subsidizing inputs does not guarantee you that you will get the production. And this is the point that I'm trying to make. So, and no nation has fed itself successfully without agric subsidy. Everywhere in the world. Donald Trump is paying money for soya because they can't export anymore because of some of his policies. But he's paying money for finished soya, grown product, I mean. He's not paying money for the inputs which go into soya. He's not subsidizing their tractors. He's not subsidizing their fertilizer. If you look at the amount of subsidies which have gone into tractors in our country, if we use all the tractors which we have bought and sold to people at subsidized rates to plow, we would have plowed this country, the whole country, many times over. 20,000 tractors, 50,000 tractors from Brazil, 30,000 tractors from India, and we keep subsidizing the tractors. You know what the tractors end up getting used for? Transport, yes. A lot of the places you go, the tractor is all used up. The plow and the harrow which came with it are behind the farmer's hut or his house and overgrown with weeds. And it's a very expensive way of transporting people. So subsidies are good in any economy, but how you structure them is critical. Same thing like the paper. I mean, what you are talking is the result of something they call the Florence Convention, which Ghana hurriedly signed What we do about negotiations and international agreements is a different matter. But we signed on to the Florence Convention, a UNICEF convention. Very good. It means that textbooks should be able to come into a country duty-free. Excellent policy. But in the process, if you don't subsidize, you remove the duty on the paper which goes to produce the textbooks, then it means you are undermining your own industry. And this is what we call, that's why I call for review, monitoring. As you do these things, you need to look at the total effect on your economy and make sure that the policy you are putting in place, the international agreements you are signing, are they the right kind of agreements? And what do you need to do in your economy not to undermine the producers in your economy? Because you sign on to an international agreement for good purpose. But in the process, if you undermine the producers in your economy, then you are shooting yourself in your foot. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. A big round of applause for my panelists. It's been an exciting day, indeed. We've gone a bit over the time that we've initially allotted, but for good reason. We're looking forward to the document that the finance minister the senior ministers already indicated they're willing to examine. At this moment, I'll invite Mr. Tego again back to help us with a closing prayer, and after which we would look forward to seeing you again next time.
Well, the Graphic Business Breakfast meeting was brought to you in collaboration with Graphic Business, partnering Stanbic Bank, as well as Joy Business. And the theme was unlocking economic growth through manufacturing, quality, cost and competitiveness. It happened at the Omanya Hall at Labadi Beach Hotel. As you may be aware, Senior Minister Mr. Osafo was a speaker, and Dr. Oting JC as well, the gentleman you just heard before Evans wrapped up that particular conversation. He is with Tropical Cables and Conductor Limited. He's actually the managing director and founder of that particular company.